The stars looked peaceful from the observation deck of the Herald's Dawn. Commander Lisa Grant stood with her hands behind her back, watching the distant galaxies spin slowly in the void. She had been a naval officer for 20 years, and she knew that peace never lasted long in space. Her communication officer rushed into the room. His face was pale and covered in sweat. "Commander, we're getting reports from the neutral zone. The Zarkonians have attacked." Lisa felt her heart drop. The Zarkonians were one of the largest empires in the galaxy. They had stayed quiet for decades, building their forces in secret. Everyone knew they were preparing for something, but no one expected them to move so quickly. "How bad is it?" she asked. The officer swallowed hard. 3 fleets are gone. The Rigel Defense Force, the Centauri Guard, and the Outer Rim Patrol, all destroyed in less than 48 hours. The Zarkonians have over 10,000 ships, and they're heading toward Council space. Lisa walked to the main console and pulled up the tactical map. Red markers showed Zarkonian positions spreading like a disease across the star chart. They were moving fast, too fast for the Council to organize a proper defense. She had seen wars before, but nothing on this scale. The Galactic Council was a collection of hundreds of species that had banded together for mutual protection. Humanity was one of the smaller members, with only a few dozen systems under their control. The bigger species, like the Centaurians and the Rigelians, had always looked down on humans as newcomers to space travel. But Lisa knew something they didn't. Humanity had a secret weapon, one that most aliens thought was just a myth. She sent a priority message to Earth Naval Command. The encryption was military grade, the kind that took quantum computers hours to crack. Her message was simple: request immediate deployment of the USS Defiant. The Council needs the old giant. On Earth, Admiral Peter Collins sat in his office at Naval Headquarters. He was 70 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. When Lisa's message arrived, he read it 3 times before leaning back in his chair. The Defiant. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. Most people in the fleet thought it was just a story, something the old-timers made up to impress the recruits. But Peter knew better. He had served on the Defiant during the First Contact War, back when humanity first met the galaxy and learned that not everyone wanted to be friends. The war had been brutal. Humanity was outnumbered and outgunned by the Krellian Empire, an aggressive species that saw humans as primitive animals. The Krellians had destroyed Earth's outer colonies and were preparing to invade the home system when the Defiant changed everything. Peter remembered the day the ship launched. It was massive, nearly twice the size of any human vessel before it. The engineers had poured everything they had into its design: new weapons, new engines, new shields that could absorb enemy fire and turn it into power. The Defiant wasn't built to fight fair battles. It was built to end wars, and it did. In one legendary battle at the Saturn shipyards, the Defiant faced the entire Krellian invasion fleet alone. When the smoke cleared, the Krellians had lost 80% of their ships and begged for peace. Humanity suddenly became a power that no one wanted to mess with. After the war, the government decided the Defiant was too dangerous to keep active. They were afraid other species would gang up on humanity if they knew what the ship could really do. So they decommissioned it, hid it away in a secret location, and spread the story that it was just propaganda, that its victories had been exaggerated. Now Lisa was asking him to wake the monster. Peter picked up his secure comm and contacted the Office of Naval Intelligence. "This is Admiral Collins. Authorization code Alpha 79er Delta. I'm issuing a reactivation order for the USS Defiant. Find Captain Kate Sullivan and tell her to assemble a crew. We have 72 hours. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the Grand Chamber on Unity Station. The mood was panic. Everyone was shouting at once, demanding solutions, blaming each other for not seeing the Zarkonian threat earlier. The Centaurian ambassador, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, slammed his staff on the ground. "We need the full might of every Council fleet. Every ship, every soldier, must be sent to stop the Zarkonians." A Rigelian representative, smaller and covered in silver scales, shook her head. "It won't be enough. Our projections show that even with all Council forces combined, we're outnumbered 2 to 1. The Zarkonians have been building their armada for 50 years. Then we negotiate," another ambassador suggested. "Perhaps if we offer them the outer territories, they will spare the core worlds. Lisa watched the debate through a video feed from the Herald's Dawn. She felt disgusted. These politicians were ready to surrender before the real fight had even started. They had grown soft during the long peace, forgotten what it meant to stand and defend what mattered. Her tactical officer interrupted her thoughts. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Zarkonian fleet. It's being broadcast to everyone in the sector." Lisa nodded. "Put it on screen." The display flickered and a massive alien face appeared. This was War Queen Velcra, the supreme commander of the Zarkonian Empire. She looked like a cross between a lizard and an insect, with multiple eyes and mandibles that clicked when she spoke. Her voice was translated by the ship's computer into something humans could understand. "Attention, Galactic Council. You have grown weak and complacent. Your peace has made you soft. The Zarkonian Empire will now claim what should have been ours centuries ago. You have one solar cycle to surrender all your worlds and submit to our rule. If you refuse, we will take them by force and show no mercy." The transmission ended. Lisa felt a cold anger settle in her chest. This was the kind of enemy that only understood strength. Words wouldn't stop them. Diplomacy wouldn't work. Only force would make them listen. She checked the chronometer on her wrist. 68 hours until the Defiant arrived. The Council forces needed to hold until then, buy time for humanity's secret weapon to reach the battlefield. Lisa opened a channel to all human ships in the sector. There weren't many, maybe 30 vessels scattered across different locations, but they were well-trained and well-armed. "All human vessels, this is Commander Grant. I need you to join the Council Defense Fleet at Sigma Station. We have reinforcements coming, but we need to hold the line until they arrive. I know the odds look bad, but trust me, help is on the way." One by one, the human captains responded with acknowledgement. They didn't ask questions. They didn't demand details. They simply moved to obey. That was the thing about human military culture that confused other species. Humans trusted their chain of command completely when lives were on the line. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, beyond Neptune's orbit where the sun was just another bright star, something ancient was waking up. The military graveyard held dozens of old warships floating silent in the dark. Most were rusted hulks that would never fly again, but one ship was different. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood in his small office on the maintenance station, staring at the orders on his screen. He read them 3 times to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. Reactivate the USS Defiant. Prepare for immediate deployment. Jake was 28 years old and had been assigned to this boring posting 2 years ago as punishment for arguing with a superior officer. His job was to check on the mothballed ships once a month and make sure they weren't falling apart. He had walked through the Defiant's corridors dozens of times, always wondering what it had been like when the ship was alive. Now he was about to find out. He grabbed his toolkit and headed to the docking bay. Chief Engineer Amy Chen was already there, looking at the massive shape of the Defiant through the viewport. The ship was enormous, over 2 kilometers long and half a kilometer wide. Its hull was dark gray, covered in scars and dents from old battles. It looked brutal and ugly compared to the sleek modern warships. "Did you get the orders?" Jake asked. Amy nodded without taking her eyes off the ship. "Yeah, I can't believe they're actually bringing her back. I thought this was just a museum piece." "The Admiral wouldn't order reactivation unless things were really bad out there," Jake said. "Come on, we have work to do." They boarded the Defiant through the main airlock. The interior was dark and cold. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls. Jake pulled out a portable power unit and connected it to the ship's systems. Slowly, the lights began to flicker on, revealing corridors that hadn't seen activity in 50 years. Amy headed straight for engineering while Jake made his way to the bridge. The command center was huge, designed to hold a crew of 50 officers. Everything looked old-fashioned, with physical switches and buttons instead of touchscreens. But Jake knew that appearances were deceiving. The Defiant's technology was decades ahead of anything else in the fleet. He sat down at the main console and began the startup sequence. Deep in the ship's core, fusion reactors came to life one by one. The Defiant had 12 main reactors, each capable of powering a small city. When all 12 were running, the ship had more energy available than most space stations. The startup process took hours. Jake worked through the night, checking systems and making sure everything still functioned. To his amazement, Captain Kate Sullivan stood at the window of her apartment on Mars, watching the red desert stretch to the horizon. Her personal comm device buzzed with an incoming call marked urgent priority. She picked it up and saw Admiral Collins's face on the screen. "Captain Sullivan, I need you in the Kuiper Belt in 12 hours. You're being given command of a special assignment." Kate raised an eyebrow. She was only 35 years old, young for a captain in the Earth Navy. But she had earned her rank through skill and courage, not connections. "What kind of assignment, sir?" The Admiral smiled slightly. "The kind that makes history. I'm sending you the coordinates now. Bring your best people." The call ended before Kate could ask more questions. She looked at the data packet that arrived on her device and felt her breath catch. The USS Defiant. She had heard stories about that ship since she was a child in the Naval Academy. Most instructors said it was just legend, that the victories had been exaggerated for propaganda purposes. But some of her professors, the old veterans, would get a distant look in their eyes when students asked about the Defiant. They would say things like, "I was there," or "I saw what it could do," before changing the subject. Now she was being given command of it. Kate spent the next hour calling her crew. She picked people she had served with before, officers she trusted with her life. First Officer Dan Rodriguez was a tactical genius who could read battle situations like other people read books. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was already at the reactivation site, which was convenient. She requested Chief Engineer Amy Chen specifically, because Amy had a reputation for performing miracles with damaged ships. 12 hours later, Kate's shuttle docked with the Kuiper Belt maintenance station. She stepped off the ramp and stopped in her tracks. Through the station's viewport, she could see the Defiant floating in space. It was bigger than she had imagined. The ship looked like a predator, all hard angles and weapon ports. Jake Morrison met her at the airlock. He saluted sharply. "Captain Sullivan, welcome aboard. The ship is powered up and ready for crew. All primary systems are operational." Kate returned the salute. "Good work, Lieutenant. Show me to the bridge." As they walked through the corridors, Kate ran her hand along the walls. The metal was cold and rough under her fingers. This ship had history. It had seen battles that modern officers only read about in textbooks. She felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The bridge doors opened with a hiss. Kate stepped inside and looked around. The command center was huge and functional, built for war rather than comfort. She sat down in the captain's chair and it felt right somehow, like she had been meant to sit here all along. Over the next 2 days, more crew members arrived. Engineers, weapons officers, medical staff, pilots. Everyone had been carefully selected for their skills and their ability to keep secrets. By the time they were done, the Defiant had a crew of 350 people. Kate called a meeting in the main briefing room. She stood at the front of the room while her officers filled the seats. Some looked excited, others looked nervous. All of them wanted to know what was happening. "I know you all have questions," Kate began. "You want to know why we've been called here? Why we're activating a ship that's been in mothballs for 50 years? The answer is simple. The Galactic Council is under attack by the Zarkonian Empire. 3 allied fleets have been destroyed, and more than 10,000 enemy ships are pushing toward Council space." She paused and looked at each officer in turn. "The Council is asking humanity for help, and we're going to give it to them in a way they won't forget. This ship, the USS Defiant, was built for one purpose: to end wars quickly and decisively. 50 years ago, it broke the back of the Krellian Empire and secured humanity's place in the galaxy. Now we're going to do it again." Dan Rodriguez raised his hand. "Captain, with respect, we're one ship. The enemy has 10,000. How are we supposed to make a difference?" Kate smiled. "Because this isn't just any ship, Commander. The Defiant has weapons and systems that the rest of the galaxy has never seen in action. Our government kept its true capabilities classified to avoid an arms race. But now the gloves are coming off." She activated the briefing room display. Technical schematics appeared, showing the Defiant's internal systems. "Our shields don't just block incoming fire. They absorb the energy and channel it into our weapons. The more the enemy shoots at us, the more powerful we become. Our plasma lance arrays can track and destroy hundreds of targets simultaneously. And that's just the conventional weapons." Amy Chen leaned forward in her seat. "Captain, I found something in the engineering database. Something called a gravity well projector. The technical specifications are beyond anything I've ever seen." Kate nodded. "That's our ace in the hole, Chief. The gravity well projector can create a localized distortion in space-time. It traps enemy ships in place, makes them unable to maneuver or escape. Once we activate it, An entire fleet becomes sitting ducks. The room went silent as the officers absorbed this information. Finally, Jake Morrison spoke up. "Sir, weapons like that could win any war." "Why did we hide them?" "Because the galaxy wasn't ready," Kate said quietly. "After the first contact war, the Council was afraid of humanity. They thought we were too aggressive, too violent. If they had known what the Defiant could really do, they might have tried to destroy Earth before we became too strong. So our leaders made a choice. They hid our best weapons and played nice, gave the galaxy time to see that humans could be trusted." Dan Rodriguez crossed his arms. "And now we're revealing the truth anyway. Won't that cause problems?" "Maybe," Kate admitted. "But the alternative is watching the Zarkonians conquer the entire galaxy. Sometimes you have to show your teeth to stop a bigger predator." The crew spent the next day drilling and practicing. Kate ran them through combat scenarios over and over until everyone knew their jobs perfectly. The Defiant systems were old-fashioned compared to modern ships, but they were also more reliable. No touch screens that could freeze up. No complex computers that could be hacked. Just solid switches and controls that did exactly what they were designed to do. Amy Chen worked in engineering, getting familiar with every system. She discovered that the fusion reactors had been upgraded with experimental technology that increased their output by 40%. The weapon capacitors could hold enough charge to fire continuously for 10 minutes without reloading. The ship's armor was made from layered metals that could regenerate slowly, fixing small damage automatically. "This ship is incredible," Amy told Kate during a status meeting. "Whoever designed it was a genius. Everything is built with redundancy. If one system fails, 2 backups kick in automatically. The Defiant can lose half its crew and still function at full combat effectiveness." Kate listened to the reports from all departments. Weapons, navigation, shields, communications. Everything was ready. The old giant was alive again and hungry for battle. On the 3rd day, Admiral Collins sent a secure transmission. "Captain Sullivan, the Council Defense Fleet is falling back to Sigma Station. They're taking heavy casualties. The Zarkonians are pushing hard. You need to get there as soon as possible." Kate checked the navigation plot. Sigma Station was in the outer rim, about 2 weeks away at conventional speed. But the Defiant had something other ships didn't. Slip space engines. Most ships in the galaxy used hyperspace drives that bent space-time to travel faster than light. But hyperspace had limits. You couldn't go too fast or the stress would tear your ship apart. Humanity had developed slip space technology that worked differently. Instead of bending space, it slipped the ship into a parallel dimension where the laws of physics were slightly different. In slip space, you could travel 10 times faster than normal. The Council knew humanity had slip space drives, but they didn't know how fast they really were. Kate smiled as she gave the order. "Helm, plot a course to Sigma Station. Maximum slip space velocity." The young pilot looked nervous. "Sir, maximum velocity? Are you sure? That's extremely dangerous." "I trust this ship," Kate said firmly. "And I trust you. Make it happen." The Defiant's engines flared to life. The ship moved away from the maintenance station and accelerated toward open space. When they were clear of obstacles, Kate gave the final order. "Engage slip space drive," reality twisted. The stars outside the viewport stretched into long lines of light, then disappeared completely. The Defiant had entered slip space, a gray void where normal rules didn't apply. The ship shook and rattled as it pushed through the dimensional barrier. On the bridge, displays showed their velocity climbing. Normal slip space speed was about 10 light-years per hour, but the Defiant was moving faster, much faster, 20 light-years per hour, then 30. The ship's frame groaned under the stress, but it held together. Amy Chen's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Captain, we're pushing the engines beyond their rated specifications. If we maintain this speed for too long, we might cause permanent damage." "How long can we hold it?" Kate asked. "Maybe 3 days. After that, I can't guarantee anything." Kate did the math in her head. 3 days at this speed would get them to Sigma Station with hours to spare. "Keep us at maximum velocity, Chief. We'll deal with repairs later." Commander Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Herald's Dawn, watching the tactical display with growing despair. The battle for Sigma Station was going badly. Council forces had managed to assemble a defensive fleet of about 800 ships from different species. It should have been enough to slow down the Zarkonian advance. But the Zarkonians were overwhelming them through sheer numbers and brutal tactics. The enemy had arrived with nearly 7,000 warships, massive vessels covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They fought without mercy, targeting disabled ships and firing on escape pods. "How many ships have we lost?" Lisa asked her tactical officer. The young man checked his console. 234 destroyed. Another 100 damaged too badly to continue fighting. At this rate, we'll be wiped out in less than 6 hours. Lisa clenched her fists. 6 hours until the Council fleet ceased to exist. Where was the Defiant? Admiral Collins had promised the ship would arrive in time. But there was still no sign of it on long-range sensors. The Zarkonian flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Devourer, pushed through the Council formation like a knife through paper. Its commander was War Queen Velcra herself, personally leading the invasion. The Devourer's weapons tore apart Council ships with contemptuous ease. Lisa watched a Centaurian cruiser explode on the view screen. The ship's reactor went critical, creating a brief new sun that faded to darkness. Hundreds of brave souls snuffed out in an instant. She felt rage building in her chest. This wasn't war. This was slaughter. "All ships fall back to Rally Point Omega," Lisa ordered. "We need to regroup and try to buy more time." The surviving Council vessels began retreating in scattered groups. The Zarkonians pursued them eagerly, sensing victory. War Queen Velcra broadcast a message on all frequencies. "Foolish Council. Did you really think you could resist the might of the Zarkonian Empire? Your ships burn like leaves in a fire. Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick." Lisa ignored the transmission. She checked the chronometer for the 100th time. 3 hours until the Defiant arrived. If Admiral Collins had calculated correctly, if the ship made it through slipspace without problems, if her sensor officer suddenly sat up straight. "Commander, I'm picking up something on long-range detection. Single contact moving extremely fast. Whatever it is, it's approaching from Galactic North." Lisa felt hope surge in her chest. "Can you identify it?" "Negative. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database, but it's definitely human in origin." Lisa allowed herself a small smile. "Broadcast to all Council ships. Tell them to hold on. Reinforcements are arriving." The Centaurian admiral, commanding from his flagship, responded with skepticism. "Commander Grant, our sensors show one ship. One ship cannot change the outcome of this battle." "This one can," Lisa replied. "Trust me. Just keep your people alive for 3 more hours." Meanwhile, the Defiant raced through slipspace. On the bridge, Kate Sullivan watched the countdown timer. 2 hours and 45 minutes until they arrived at Sigma Station. She could feel the tension in the air. Her crew was ready, but they were also nervous. Most of them had never been in real combat before. Jake Morrison checked his weapons console for the 10th time. "Captain, all plasma lance arrays are charged and ready. Missile tubes are loaded. The gravity well projector is on standby." "Good," Kate said. "How are our shields?" "At maximum capacity. The shield generators are performing better than expected. I think 50 years of rest did them good." Dan Rodriguez studied the tactical data they were receiving from Sigma Station. "Captain, the Council fleet is getting hammered. They've lost over a quarter of their forces already. If we don't arrive soon, there won't be anyone left to save." Kate kept her voice calm. "We'll make it in time, Commander. And when we do, those Zarkonians are going to wish they'd stayed home." Amy Chen's voice came through from engineering. "Captain, I need to talk to you about our combat strategy. The systems I've been studying, they're designed to work together in a very specific way. I think I understand how the original crew used this ship." "Go ahead, Chief." "The shields absorb energy from enemy fire and channel it to the weapons. The more they shoot at us, the stronger we become. But there's a limit to how much energy the capacitors can hold. If we take too much fire at once, the system will overload." Kate nodded. "So we need to let them shoot at us, but not too much at once." "Exactly. I recommend we engage small groups of enemy ships first. Let them charge up our systems. Then we hit the main fleet when we're at maximum power." "Makes sense. I'll adjust the battle plan accordingly." The hours crawled by. The crew ran through final checks and preparations. Medical teams set up emergency stations. Damage control parties positioned themselves throughout the ship. Everyone knew this was going to be the fight of their lives. Finally, the countdown timer reached 0. Kate gripped the arms of her command chair. "Helm, prepare to exit slipspace. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill." Warning lights flashed red throughout the ship. The Defiant shuddered as it transitioned back to normal space. Reality snapped back into focus, and suddenly they were at the edge of the Sigma Station system. The main view screen showed the battle raging in the distance. Council ships were scattered and retreating. Zarkonian vessels pursued them in organized formations. And in the center of it all, the massive shape of the Devourer dominated the battlefield. Jake Morrison scanned the enemy fleet. "Captain, I count 7,200 Zarkonian ships. Most are cruiser class, but there are at least 50 dreadnoughts, including the flagship. 7,000 to 1. Kate would have laughed if the situation wasn't so serious. "Open a channel to Commander Grant on the Herald's Dawn." Lisa's face appeared on a side screen. She looked exhausted but relieved. "Captain Sullivan, good to see you. I was starting to worry. Sorry we're late, Commander. Traffic was terrible. We'll take it from here. Captain, be careful. The Zarkonians are extremely aggressive. They don't take prisoners and they don't show mercy." Kate smiled coldly. "Neither do we when pushed. Get your ships to safety. Things are about to get messy." She closed the channel and looked at her crew. "All right, people. This is what we trained for. The Zarkonians think they can just roll over the council because they have numbers. We're going to teach them that numbers don't mean everything. Helm, take us in. Nice and slow. Let them see us coming." The Defiant moved forward at 1/4 speed. Its massive shape became visible to the Zarkonian fleet as they approached. Kate wanted them to see the ship clearly, wanted them to wonder what it was. On the Devourer, War Queen Velcra studied the approaching human vessel with her tactical staff. "What is that ship? I've never seen a human vessel that large." One of her officers checked the database. "My queen, there are legends of an ancient human warship from the First Contact War. They called it the Defiant. But those are just stories." Velcra clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "One ship against our entire fleet. Either the humans are incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Send 300 ships to intercept and destroy it. The rest of the fleet will continue pursuing the Council forces." 300 Zarkonian cruisers broke formation and accelerated toward the Defiant. They spread out in a wide pattern, preparing to surround the human ship and attack from all sides. On the Defiant's bridge, Kate watched them come. "Steady, everyone. Remember the plan. Let them shoot first." Jake Morrison looked nervous. "Captain, shouldn't we maneuver? They're trying to surround us. No, we hold position. Let them think we're an easy target." The Zarkonian ships reached firing range and opened up with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles crossed the void, converging on the Defiant from multiple angles. Kate gripped her chair. Now we see if the engineers knew what they were doing. Shields to maximum. The Defiant's shields flared to life as the enemy weapons hit, but instead of exploding or buckling, the shields glowed brighter and brighter. Energy from the Zarkonian attack was being absorbed and redirected into the ship's power grid. Amy Chen watched her readouts with amazement. "Captain, shield generators are at 150% capacity. All weapon systems are fully charged. We're pulling in more energy than we're using." Kate's smile grew wider. "Well then, it would be rude not to return fire. Mr. Morrison, light them up." Jake's fingers danced across his console. Firing plasma lance arrays, the Defiant's weapons came alive. Dozens of plasma lance ports opened along the ship's hull, each one glowing with contained power. Then they fired. What happened next would be burned into the memory of every person who witnessed it. The plasma lances didn't fire in single beams. Each lance split into multiple smaller beams that tracked different targets with perfect accuracy. The Defiant's targeting computer could track thousands of enemy ships simultaneously and direct fire accordingly. In the first volley, 80 Zarkonian ships simply ceased to exist. Their shields were overwhelmed in an instant. The plasma beams punched through armor like it was paper, causing fusion reactors to explode, the void filled with expanding clouds of debris and frozen atmosphere. The remaining Zarkonian ships in the interceptor force tried to scatter, but the Defiant's weapons didn't stop firing. Every 2 seconds, another. The Zarkonian fleet charged toward the Defiant like a tidal wave of metal and fury. 7,000 warships all firing at once created a storm of energy that lit up the void. War Queen Velcra stood on her command throne, watching the tactical display with anticipation. No ship could withstand such concentrated firepower. The human vessel would be torn apart. But the Defiant didn't explode. Its shields absorbed the incoming fire, glowing brighter and brighter as more energy poured into them. The ship hung in, space like a small sun, collecting power from every shot the Zarkonians threw at it. On the bridge, Kate watched the shield readouts climb. "Chief Chen, what's our status?" Amy's voice came back excited and slightly scared. "Captain, the shields are at 300% capacity and still rising. The weapon capacitors are completely full. We have more power available than I've ever seen." Kate nodded. "Then let's not waste it. Mr. Morrison, fire all weapons. Full spread pattern. Maximum rate of fire." Jake punched commands into his console. "Aye, Captain. Firing everything we've got." The Defiant transformed into a weapon of mass destruction. Plasma lances fired from every angle, each beam splitting into dozens of smaller ones that tracked separate targets. Quantum disruptor missiles launched from tubes along the ship's spine, invisible to sensors until they reached their targets. Point defense lasers took down incoming missiles before they could get close. The result was devastating. Zarkonian ships exploded by the dozens, then by the hundreds. Their shields couldn't handle the concentrated fire. Their armor melted under the plasma beams. The quantum disruptors phased through their hulls and detonated inside, tearing ships apart from within. War Queen Velcra watched in growing horror as her fleet was decimated. In just 10 minutes of combat, she had lost over 1,000 ships. The human vessel showed no signs of slowing down. Its weapons never stopped firing. "All ships, focus fire on that vessel," Velcra screamed. "Pour everything into its shields. We have to overload them." The Zarkonian fleet intensified their attack. Every gun, every missile, every weapon they had was directed at the Defiant. The space around the human ship became a storm of energy and explosions. On the Defiant, warning alarms started going off. Amy Chen monitored the shield generators carefully. "Captain, we're taking in too much energy. The capacitors are at 400% and climbing. If they hit 500%, we'll start taking damage." Dan Rodriguez checked his tactical plot. "Captain, we've destroyed about 1,500 enemy ships, but there are still over 5,000 left. We can't take all of them at once." Kate had been expecting this. The Defiant was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. If the Zarkonians kept up their concentrated fire, eventually the shields would fail. She needed to change the situation. "Mr. Morrison, prepare the gravity well projector. Mr. Rodriguez, calculate the optimal activation radius. I want to catch as many enemy ships as possible." Dan's fingers flew across his console. "Running calculations now. Recommend activation at current position with a radius of 50,000 kilometers. That should trap approximately 4,000 enemy vessels. Do it." Jake armed the gravity well projector, a weapon that had never been used in combat before. The theory was simple, but the execution was complex. The projector created a massive distortion in space-time, bending the fabric of reality itself. Ships caught in the field would find themselves unable to maneuver, their engines useless against the warped space around them. "Projector ready, Captain." Kate took a deep breath. "Activate." Deep in the Defiant's core, exotic matter reactors came to life. They generated massive amounts of negative energy, more than enough to tear a hole in space if not properly contained. The energy was channeled through crystalline matrices and focused into a single point just ahead of the ship. Then reality broke. Space itself bent around the Defiant. The stars twisted and warped. The Zarkonian ships found themselves caught in an invisible trap. Their engines fired at maximum power, but they didn't move. They were stuck in place like insects in amber. War Queen Velcra felt panic for the first time in her military career. Her flagship and 4,000 other vessels were trapped. They couldn't escape. They couldn't maneuver. They could only sit and wait for death to come. Kate watched the tactical display with satisfaction. All ships captured. Mr. Morrison, you may fire when ready. The Defiant's weapons came alive again, but now the Zarkonians couldn't dodge or scatter. They were stationary targets. The plasma lances swept through the trapped fleet like a scythe through wheat. Ships exploded one after another in a chain reaction of destruction. The Council forces watched from a safe distance. Commander Lisa Grant stood on the Herald's Dawn with tears running down her face. The stories had been true. The Defiant was exactly as powerful as the legends claimed. Maybe even more so. A Centaurian admiral opened a channel to her. "Commander Grant, What manner of weapon is this? I have never seen anything like it in 50 years of military service. Lisa wiped her eyes. That's humanity's secret, Admiral. We build ships that end wars, not just fight them. The battle continued for another hour. The Defiant methodically destroyed every Zarkonian ship caught in the gravity well. The remaining 3,000 enemy vessels that were outside the trap tried to flee, but the Defiant released the gravity well and pursued them. Kate had no intention of letting them escape. She wanted to send a message that would be heard across the entire galaxy. Helm, pursue the fleeing vessels. Maximum speed. Weapons, keep firing. I want total victory here. The Defiant chased down the retreating Zarkonians like a predator hunting prey. Its slipspace engines allowed it to move faster than any other ship in the system. Every few minutes it would catch up to a group of fleeing vessels and destroy them with precise fire. War Queen Velkra's flagship, the Devourer, tried to escape with the largest group of survivors. But the Defiant was faster. It caught up to them within 30 minutes. Kate opened a direct channel to the Zarkonian flagship. War Queen Velkra, this is your final chance. Surrender now or I will destroy every ship in your fleet, including yours. Velkra appeared on the screen. She looked defeated, her pride broken. You have won, human. I do not understand how one ship could defeat an armada, but you have done so. What are your terms? Simple. You will withdraw all Zarkonian forces from Council space immediately. You will pay reparations for the damage you've caused, and you will never threaten the Council again. If you agree to these terms, I will let you and your remaining ships leave alive. Velkra clicked her mandibles in what might have been a bitter laugh. And if I refuse? Kate's face showed no emotion. Then I will demonstrate what else we kept hidden. Your choice. The War Queen looked at her tactical display. She had less than 3,000 ships left out of the 10,000 she'd started with. The human vessel showed no signs of damage despite hours of combat. She knew when she was beaten. I accept your terms. The Zarkonian Empire will withdraw. Kate nodded. Smart decision. Now go home and tell your people what happened here today. Tell them that humanity is not to be trifled with. Tell them that we have weapons they can't imagine, and the will to use them if threatened. The Zarkonian fleet turned and limped away, headed back to their own space. The Devourer was damaged and smoking, its once proud hull scarred by the battle. As they left, Kate opened a channel to all Council ships. This is Captain Sullivan. The immediate threat has been neutralized. All ships may stand down from combat alert. The Council fleet erupted in celebration. Ships flashed their running lights in salute. Messages of gratitude poured in from every species present. Humanity had saved them all, but Kate felt no joy. She had done what was necessary, shown the galaxy that humans could not be pushed around. But she had also revealed secrets that were supposed to stay hidden. There would be consequences for this. Commander Lisa Grant called from the Herald's Dawn. Captain Sullivan, the Council is requesting your presence at Unity Station. They want to thank you personally. Kate sighed. Tell them I'll be there in 3 days. The Defiant needs repairs and my crew needs rest. She closed the channel and looked at her exhausted crew. They had performed brilliantly, every single one of them. All hands, this is the captain. Well done. You've just made history. Get some rest. We've earned it. As the adrenaline faded, Kate allowed herself to feel the weight of what they'd done. The Defiant had lived up to its legend and created a new one. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And somewhere in the depths of space, other empires and species would be having very nervous conversations about what the humans might do next. 3 days after the battle, the Defiant arrived at Unity Station. The massive space station was the heart of the Galactic Council, a gleaming structure that could hold millions of beings from hundreds of different species. As the warship approached, every sensor in the system locked onto it. The station's traffic control seemed uncertain how to proceed. A nervous voice came over the comm. USS Defiant, this is Unity Station Control. We're not sure where to dock a ship of your size. Most of our berths are designed for vessels 1/10 your mass. Kate smiled. No problem, Control. We'll hold position at 10,000 kilometers. I'll take a shuttle to the station. She assembled a small team for the visit. Dan Rodriguez would come as her first officer. Commander Lisa Grant would join them as the human who had first called for the Defiant. And Jake Morrison would represent the crew who had brought the ship back to life. The shuttle ride to Unity Station was quiet. Everyone was lost in their own thoughts about what came next. They had won a great victory, but they had also scared the galaxy. Kate wondered how the council would react. The shuttle docked at the main diplomatic bay. As they stepped out, Kate was surprised to find an honor guard waiting. Soldiers from a dozen different species stood at attention, their weapons held in salute. The gesture was meant to show respect, but Kate could see fear in some of their eyes. A tall Centaurian diplomat approached. This was Ambassador Theron, one of the most powerful figures in the council. He had 4 arms and blue skin, with eyes that had seen centuries of politics and war. "Captain Sullivan," Theron said formally, "the council requests your presence in the Grand Chamber." "We have much to discuss," Kate nodded. "Lead the way, Ambassador." They walked through the station's corridors. Other beings stopped and stared as they passed. Word of the battle had spread quickly. Everyone knew that a single human ship had destroyed most of a Zarkonian fleet. The whispers followed them everywhere. The Grand Chamber was enormous, a circular room with seating for representatives from 200 species. Every seat was filled. The council had called a full session to address what had happened. Kate and her team were directed to stand in the center of the chamber. She felt like she was on trial, with hundreds of alien eyes watching her every move. The council speaker, a being made of energy that inhabited a containment suit, addressed the assembly. "We are here to discuss the battle at Sigma Station and its implications. Captain Sullivan, you are invited to speak first." Kate stepped forward. She had prepared a speech, but now that she was here, the words seemed wrong. She decided to speak from the heart instead. "Honored representatives, I know you have questions. I know many of you are afraid of what the Defiant represents. But let me be clear about something. Humanity didn't want to reveal our capabilities. We would have been happy to remain a minor power, trading peacefully and minding our own business." She paused and looked around the chamber, but the Zarkonians threatened everything the council has built. "They would have conquered your worlds, enslaved your people, destroyed your cultures. Someone had to stop them, and we were the only ones who could." Ambassador Theron spoke up. "Captain, no one disputes that you saved us. But the power your ship displayed was shocking. Weapons that can destroy fleets. Technology that traps ships in space. These capabilities change the balance of power in the galaxy." Kate nodded. "Yes, they do. But that's always been true. Humanity has had these weapons for 50 years. We could have used them to conquer or threaten, but we didn't. We chose peace instead. That should tell you everything you need to know about our intentions." A Rigelian representative, small and covered in silver scales, stood up. "But now that we know what you can do, how can we trust you? What's to stop humanity from using the Defiant to impose your will on the rest of us?" Kate felt frustration building. These politicians were so focused on power and threats that they couldn't see the bigger picture. "You can trust us for the same reason you've always been able to trust us. Because humans understand something that many species seem to forget. Real strength isn't about having the biggest weapons. It's about knowing when not to use them." Commander Lisa Grant stepped forward to support her captain. "If I may speak, honored council, I've served alongside many species in my 20 years as an officer. And I can tell you that humans value cooperation and friendship above dominance. Yes, we have powerful weapons, but we've also been the first to offer aid during disasters, the first to negotiate instead of fight, the first to sacrifice for others." Dan Rodriguez added his voice. "The Defiant was designed to end wars quickly, to minimize casualties on all sides. If we had wanted to conquer the galaxy, we would have done it 50 years ago when we first built the ship. Instead, we hid it away and focused on building peaceful relationships." The chamber fell silent as the council representatives considered these words. Finally, an old Centaurian admiral spoke up. He was ancient with scars covering his blue skin. "I fought in the First Contact War. I was there when the Defiant broke the Krellian fleet. I saw what that ship could do, and I have spent 50 years grateful that humans chose peace." He stood slowly, his forearms shaking with age. The young ones don't remember what it was like back then. The Krellians were monsters. They would have slaughtered billions if left unchecked. The Defiant stopped them, and then humanity put the weapon away. That showed more wisdom than any species I've known. Other veterans in the chamber nodded agreement. They remembered the old days and understood what Kate was trying to say. The council speaker raised a hand for silence. Captain Sullivan, the council acknowledges humanity's service and sacrifice. You have saved us from the Zarkonian threat. However, we must also address the reality of the situation. Your technology has changed the balance of power. How do you propose we move forward? Kate had been thinking about this question for 3 days. I propose transparency and cooperation. Humanity will share some of our defensive technology with the Council, enough to help you defend yourselves. In return, we ask to be treated as full equals in the Council, with a voice in major decisions. Ambassador Theron clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. You would share your technology? After keeping it secret for so long? Limited technology, Kate clarified. Shield systems and sensor arrays. Things that help with defense but don't enable aggression. We'll keep our offensive weapons classified, but we'll promise to deploy them only in defense of the Council and its members. A Rigelian scientist stood up. And what about the gravity well projector? That technology alone could revolutionize space travel and defense. Kate shook her head. That stays classified. The gravity well is too dangerous in the wrong hands. It could be used to trap civilian ships to create weapons of mass destruction. Humanity will maintain sole control of that system. The debate continued for hours. Representatives argued back and forth about trust, power, and the future of the galaxy. Some wanted to demand that humanity disarm. Others wanted to ally more closely with Earth. A few even suggested trying to seize the Defiant by force, though those voices were quickly shouted down. Finally, as the sun set outside the station's windows, the council speaker called for a vote. All those in favor of accepting Captain Sullivan's proposal for limited technology sharing and enhanced human participation in the council indicate support. The vote was overwhelming. Out of 200 representatives, 172 voted in favor. 20 voted against. 8 abstained. The speaker announced the result. The motion carries. Captain Sullivan, humanity's offer is accepted. Welcome to full council membership. Kate felt relief wash over her. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Humanity would remain strong but also integrated with the galactic community. After the session ended, many representatives approached Kate to thank her personally. The Centaurian admiral who had spoken in her defense pulled her aside. Captain, you handled that well. But remember, trust is fragile. One mistake, one abuse of power, and you'll turn the galaxy against humanity. Kate nodded seriously. I understand, Admiral. We'll be careful. As they prepared to leave Unity Station, Commander Lisa Grant walked alongside Kate. What happens now, Captain? Does the Defiant go back into storage? Kate thought about it. No, Admiral Collins was right. The galaxy needs to remember this lesson. The Defiant will remain active, patrolling Council space as a deterrent, but we'll use it sparingly. Let people see it occasionally, remember what it can do, but never fear that we'll abuse its power. Jake Morrison joined them. Captain, the crew wants to know if we'll be permanently assigned to the Defiant. If you want to be. This is the most important ship in the fleet now. The posting will be prestigious but also dangerous. We'll be the first line of defense if another threat emerges. Jake grinned. Sounds perfect to me. They boarded the shuttle and returned to the Defiant. As they approached the warship, Kate looked at its scarred hull and felt pride. This ship represented the best of humanity, power tempered by wisdom, strength used in defense of others. Technology advanced but controlled. On the bridge, Amy Chen was coordinating repairs. She looked up as Kate entered. Captain, I've been analyzing the battle data. We used about